Hey y'all, good evening. Thanks for joining me, Dorothy, on Through an Orthodox Christian Lens. I just have a few things I want to share with you on the prophecies of Holy Elder Joseph of WWIII. Now, as you know, I have shown you two different prophecies that he talked about, both having to do with World War III. And I'm going to go back into the 7 phases of World War III that he talks about. But first, I'm going to, and that prophecy I think is from 2007 or 2009. I'm now going to share with you a prophecy that was written down that I copied over years ago. And this prophecy, it was an interview with Elder Joseph, I think, in 2001, October 26, 2001. And so I'm going to share just a little bit of his words on World War III then. And as you can see, he's talked about it several times, but each one that he talks about is a little bit different. He doesn't say the exact same thing each time, which I find interesting. So I'm going to grab this. Let's see. So he's answering the interviewer, and he says, "Things are now in such a state of deterioration, a condition that is common throughout the entire world at the present time, and it is subsequent to this specific condition, this precise limit, that the wrath of God will begin. We have reached this extreme, and it will now happen that what the Lord in his mercy formerly endured, he will now, acting in accordance with his righteousness, chastise, because the time has now come for that." He's going to chastise, which is, as I said, St. Paisios and Metropolitan Neophotos brought this up. Neophotos brought this up because he knew a lot of saints. He was around a lot of saints when he was growing up. And it's the same thing as when he says chastise, is the same where the saint said that Christ will give every country, peoples, a slap. Okay, so there will be a war and wars, and we will experience great difficulties. I will be using Hebrews instead of the JEWS word for this, okay? World power has now been seized by the Hebrews, and their goal is to annihilate Christianity. The wrath of God will be such that all those secret foes who are bringing about this state of affairs will be destroyed themselves. So that's very interesting, isn't it? All the schemers, all the ones out for greed and power and lust for power and bloodlust and wars and doing networks of pedophile rings and all these terrible sex trafficking rings and everything else that's been going on. Yeah. It is for this purpose in particular that the wrath of the Lord is being sent down, in order to destroy them in one way or another. And this also is social issues too. What's been happening to our children. Metropolitan Neophotos said there's the 3 things. Abnormal and unhealthy sexual things in and outside of marriage, abortions, the occult, Satan worship, and all that. Eldris Galacticia said the same thing before she died. I think she died in 2015 or something. In order to destroy them in one way or another. But this should not unduly frighten us, because we must always have hope in God, because thousands, millions of martyrs, including our new martyrs, suffered in exactly the same way, and we must be prepared for this and not be unduly frightened. There must be patience, prayer, and hope in divine providence. On our part, let us pray for the renaissance of our Christianity after this war, after everything that awaits us, in order that the Lord might truly give us the strength to restore all this. But this evil will have to be endured. He's asking how soon will Russia be reborn. And he said, everything has now begun. Now there will be a great explosion. Following this, there will be rebirth. He's talking about the journalist is talking about, the interviewer is talking about streaming myrrh, the icons, and one's exuding blood. And then Elder says, and here in Greece too, many are streaming myrrh. The word is that the Savior is weeping and the Mother of God is weeping and the icons weep. So the interviewer says they bring an icon and there is a clump of blood on it, like this. It's a paper icon and so fragrant. Imagine. They took it in for analysis and turned out that this was plasma. Elder Joseph says, this is the beginning of these events, troublesome events, military ones. And you'll have to understand that icons usually, they can be doing this on and off for years, but a lot of this was going on before COVID started. Before that big pandemic issue, there was a lot of bleeding icons and more streaming icons as well. This is the beginning of these events, troublesome events, military ones. The movers and shakers of this evil are the Hebrews. They are being prompted to do this by the devil in order to start this, in order to destroy the seed of orthodoxy in Greece and in Russia. This will be their chief obstacle to world domination. And they nevertheless will compel the Turks to come here to Greece in order to begin their work. And Greece, although she has a government, just does not in reality have a government. As such, she lacks strength, and the Turks will come here. This will be the moment when Russia, too, will move her forces in order to repel the Turks. Events will develop thus. When Russia goes to Greece's aid, the Americans and NATO will attempt to prevent this in order that there might be no union, no merger between two Orthodox nations. They will also arouse our other powers, such as the Japanese and others. There will be great slaughter upon the territory of the former Byzantine Empire. Of those who perish, there will be some 600 million alone. I've heard St. Cosmas say about the same thing as St. Paisios saying that many, and that was just men or something. It was unheard of. The Vatican will also participate greatly in all this in order to impede the growing role of orthodoxy and prevent such unification. Thus will divine providence find its fulfillment. God will permit the destruction of all those who are sowing these temptations, pornography, and drug addiction. Important. Because when you think of the PEDO and the SEX rings, networks, trafficking, that fits in there. And the Lord will so blind their minds that they will destroy one another without receiving any satisfaction therefrom. The Lord will permit this precisely in order to bring about a great purging. As concerns Putin, that time will not last long, and there will be an immediate war, and he will not be around for long. But following this extensive cleansing, I wonder what that means. But following this extensive cleansing, there will be a great renaissance of orthodoxy, not only in Russia, but throughout the entire world. Such a great surge of orthodoxy, the Lord will extend his blessing, his grace, just as had been the case in the first few centuries. Then, when people went to the Lord with an open heart, this will last for 3 to 4 decades, and the dictatorship of the Antichrist will come. So that's what he said in 2001. And now I'm going to go back into the seven phases. I want to clarify something, because I was thinking about reading over some of these, phase 1, phase 2. Well, the truth is he puts in these phases, but that doesn't mean, obviously, the events can happen anytime within all of this. All of the events that are going to happen they don't necessarily go chronologically. So that's what I need to clarify, is that just because it says phase 1, phase 2, doesn't mean that it's going to chronologically line up perfectly. There's a lot of things going on at one time, and you don't know exactly what comes first and whatever, but you just know that this war is coming with all these elements to it. I just want to make sure you understood that. So the reason why I'm saying this is because of this information down here. I'm going to move myself for a minute. And this is part of the phase 1. Okay, so we know that something happened in 2008 between Georgia and Russia. That was a part of phase 1. But anyway, basically he's saying this all started then, and it's leading up to the main war. And so you'll notice at the end it says, as long as the Russians are fighting there with Georgia, the Ukrainians will be incited by the Americans and will create strong provocations against them. Now, this could have been 2014 with the Maidan coup and all the things that were going on in the Donbass and Lugansk region, and 8 years of bombing civilians there in that region. Then we're going to move over to the next portion, because this is all part of this first portion. And he says, and then it says, Turkey will then allow American ships and aircraft to pass through the straits of the Hellespont and from her national airspace to strike the Russians. Now, this obviously has not happened yet. So he's bringing this up. And I'm just saying that although Israel has struck Iran's facility in phase 2, that doesn't mean that none of this other stuff is happening, or it's not chronologically correct. It doesn't matter. It's happening and it's in there. And that's the same thing for this. So then the countdown for the Turks will begin. The Russians will very soon occupy Ukraine and will be enthusiastically welcomed in the cities. So, with that information, you see how he doesn't go in. He doesn't mention here about the Ukraine-Russian war, okay? He just said that Ukraine provocations happen, so he doesn't get into that. But he eventually gets to that the Russians will occupy Ukraine. So you see how he talks. He has, I'm sure, the revelations come in his head, and they're there, and he puts out what he sees in his mind. So they're not going to line up 100%. That would be unrealistic. In any case, Russia still, it says it's going to occupy Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians will welcome them. And it's hard to believe, but remember, the elder Jonah said the same thing, and so did St. Lawrence regarding the Ukraine-Russia thing. So then it says, over Ukraine and the Black Sea, the Americans and Russians will fight for the first time, air battles. Now we know what's going on in the Black Sea and Mediterranean and the Baltic Sea. There's a lot of things going on in the seas there of NATO against the Russian fleet, as I noted the other day in one of my videos that I talked about happening. I think Alistair Crook brought it up. So here he's talking basically about that. And the Russians will prevail overwhelmingly. In Turkey, a dictatorship will have been imposed. And this is where what St. Paisios said, the turn of the elections of the next generation of leaders are going to begin before the next part happens with Turkey's provocation against Greece. So he mentions that basically here. The Kurds will rise up, creating a front against the Turks. And as you see what's going on in Syria, it looks like it's heating up between, as we said, the Turks and the Israelis, because they want their regions there. And as Metropolitan Neophyta said, there's going to be a conflict between the Turks and the Israelis on that. But here the Kurds are also in Syria, and they're going to rise up. There will be a global economic upheaval, a stoppage of payments, the collapse of one economy after another, popular uprisings with economic demands, and the refusal of European troops conscription. And the Europe's been in a recession for quite a while, especially Germany, and they've all been hurting over there. That you've heard through Britain and France and all the others. So have we. So we see this. It's been going on. It's interesting. Nobody the Europeans don't want to don't want to be drafted, which makes sense. In one night, thousands of employees will be fired both in America and in Greece. He said the following about the economic crisis in Greece: it will be good for everyone to take care to save the necessities for his family. The crisis will fluctuate, trying to sow despair and panic. People will lose their deposits and be fired from their jobs. After an outbreak of crisis in the first days, it will seem that everything is under control. Then they will be hit harder and mercilessly. Loan installments will increase tenfold overnight. People will kill themselves. Shops and banks will be looted and set on fire. The economy will collapse, and unprecedented taxes will be imposed, even on domestic animals. Because, anytime there's a real serious economic downturn, depression, whatever, even recession, but the real serious ones, people, if they don't have food to eat, they get desperate and they do these things. As it says there, set on fire, looted, all that stuff. And you'll notice most of the time when there's economies that break down and are falling apart, then the wars actually accelerate and come about. That's what's happened in almost every single war in history, especially the past century or so. Okay, so then I've got this thing flying around in my room. Let me move on to, so then as we go, we're back to where I had left it the other day when I was doing reading off of this before. This is when in phase 2 it says an attack by America and Israel against Iran is imminent. So again, this actually did happen, but he's saying this in 2007, 2009, around that time, and he had all this information. It's amazing how much he has on this, but he's so close to God. And Elder Joseph Vedapuri is that's it on Mount Athos. So I just wanted to catch up on the phase 1 thing, and because I was looking over it and I thought, well, that hasn't quite happened yet. So just to let you know, so that it's a reminder of what that was said, and keeping an eye out on all these things that are going on. Okay? And thanks so much for watching. I hope you're having a great evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. And thanks so much for watching, as I said, and I appreciate your support. Hope you have a blessed night. Until next time.